Frog Bit Bloke.
Hello and welcome to the highlights, if you could call it the highlights, of episodes 1 to 10. There's not very many, to be honest, but this is basically for those of you that can't be arsed or you're too lazy to troll through and sit through episodes 1 to 10 and you just want some of the sort of the funnier bits, funnier in inverted commas. Anyway, I've sort of compiled some of the best bits. When I say some of the best bits, some of the bits that won't make you fall asleep from episodes 1 to 10, I put them all in one super duper episode and it's yours extra free for now, so enjoy.
The Frog Bit Bloke.
Yeah, talking of cats, I've got a dog. Is it alright to let my dog out at night and let it run round all night, shitting in other people's gardens, killing things in other people's gardens? And imagine the uproar if I did that. Why is it alright for a cat to do that? Someone answer me. I mean, I do like cats. I've had them in the past, but why is it alright for cats to do that? And you ask people and they go, oh yeah, but not our Tiddles. Our Tiddles doesn't kill anything. It's always someone else's cat, isn't it? And other people say, oh yeah, they're just doing what comes natural to them. It's nature. All right, well, I'm going to buy a fucking tiger, right? And I'm going to let the tiger loose in the neighbourhood and I'm going to let it eat you and I'm going to let it eat your kids. And when you complain, which you wouldn't be able to because you've been eaten, but if someone else who was still alive was complaining, I'd just be able to turn around and go, yeah, well, that's nature, isn't it?
The Frog Bit Bloke.
Now, talking of hedgehog shit, I mean, I know we weren't talking about hedgehog shit, but I'm going to bring it up. Last Friday night, I actually went on the internet to look what hedgehog shit looks like because I do feed hedgehogs on the patio. I give them sunflower hearts and sultanas, and there was some little poos all over the patio, and I wanted to see if it was hedgehog poo. As you do on a Friday night, that sort of passes for entertainment around our way. So I went on the internet and I went to this page, this forum, and I actually found out, yes, it is actually hedgehog poo. Little black poos, if you're interested. I don't need to go into too much detail, do I? And there was one, I just ended up reading this thread about plants, and they were talking about this plant. I can't remember what the plant was, and this person went, oh yeah, it's a lovely plant, and I'd love to have it in my garden, but it looks too messy. I mean, messy? What messy? It's a fucking plant. What sort of dress code does a plant have to have? Oh, you're not coming in, mate. You look too messy. What is up with people? What is up with people? How can a plant be messy? Why are some people so keen to have complete control over their gardens? I don't understand it. What is it? Is it just fashion? Do they like controlling the rest of their lives? What is up with the world? Is it just me and us tree hugger types? I know it's important. It's important that we get in people's mindsets. If we want to change the world, we've got to get in people's mindset. But sometimes I look at the mindset of the world and all I can think is mental. Completely batshit. Or should that be hedgehog shit mental? And now the topic on everyone's lips, wee. Probably not the best phrase to use. Wild weeing. I was having a conversation with my friend who's a gardener. I will keep him anonymous. And he said, we were talking about compost, and he read that it was a good idea to put wee on your compost. Now I was thinking then, do you actually then have to do it indoors, do it in a bucket and carry it out and pour in your compost? Or is it all right to wee on your compost? And if you've got them plastic compost bins that's quite tall, you'd have to get some sort of fountain going, wouldn't you? And if you're a woman, obviously that'd be different. You'd have to sort of climb up and squat on top of it, and that would look a bit weird. But so is it okay to wee outside? Is it okay? My missus actually insists that I do wee outside, even in the middle of the night. No, not really, not in the middle of the night. But if I'm outside doing things, she says, oh, you've got to wee outside. You've got to wee outside. And I said, well, look, can I not just take my shoes off and come in? And she says, it's not your shoes that are the problem. So does everyone do it? I know it's easier for us blokes. We can pretend we're doing something else. And I have a sort of like a compost bin at the back of the allotment. And I can actually, if I need a wee, I can sort of do it. I won't go into too much detail, but I can do it with one hand and lift the lid off the compost bucket with the other and pretend I'm looking at the compost or something. We can do other things, can't we? Pretend that we're weeing. But women, you can't pretend you're doing anything else when you're weeing other than pooing, which just makes it worse, doesn't it? Oh no, I'm not having a wee. I was actually having a poo. Oh, that's all right then.
The Frog Bit Bloke.
Now, there's a bloke near me. Now, I'm not going to slag someone off here. He's a lovely old guy. Him and his missus, they're in their 80s. Broad-minded. You know, he's broad-minded. He used to grow his own veg and he used to win prizes for going leeks and stuff. I'm actually going to try and have an interview with him. And he's got a big lawn and you can hear him at the weekend and his grandkids come and you can hear him laughing and playing and kicking the ball about and having a good time. And brilliant. And at the edge of the lawn, he's got like patches that he puts aside for wildflowers because he sees the importance of it. He's not some eco warrior. He's just an old guy that knows a lot about plants. And he obviously thinks, yep, I've got to create balance. And that's all it's about, isn't it? It's all about balance, asking people to find some balance. Now, he shares a garden edge with a young couple, and last year but one, he actually did along their boundary, there's not much going on their side, so he threw some seeds, and some went on to their side, and they grew, and one of the couples sort of went mad and asked him to pull them all out because they were wild flowers. And you've got to be thinking, some people do actually hate wildflowers. I don't know what it is. There's a phobia about it. I've had a look that I can't find a term for wildflower phobia, but you might be wildflower phobic. And a while back, when I was living in the city, I used to work with this organisation called Newcastle Green Space Initiative, NGSI, which I might actually talk about in more detail at some point. And what they do is it's about rewilding public spaces. So wherever any members live in, they get in touch with the council. And if there's like a big park, they actually try and get a bit put aside to grow some wildflowers and stuff like this. And one bloke was, for a park near him, he was trying to get the council to grow wildflowers in a big park. They'd plant them and then the council would cut them. A lovely idea, but there was some people objected. There was lots of people objected. And they said they were worried because drug dealers might hide in the grass. Yeah. Now, why would a drug dealer hide in the grass? If you were a drug dealer, wouldn't you better be hiding in a building or something? Why don't you knock all the buildings down? And even if they were hiding in the grass and you came along and you were going for a walk, your pensioner was going along for a walk, you could just say no. You know that? Learn to say no. Anyway, you'd be not a very good drug dealer, would you, if you spent all your time hiding amongst the wildflowers? If you want to sell drugs, look, I'll give you a bit of advice if you're a drug dealer. If you want to sell drugs, get yourself into the city where all the young people are, give them the first bit free, get them hooked. That's how you should do it. Now, I'm not suggesting you do that, but that's how I would do it. What I wouldn't do is spend my time lying down amongst wildflowers in the park. You're not going to find many kids and people that you want to sell drugs to lying in the wildflowers in the park. So why are these people worried that drug dealers are going to be lying in long grass waiting to pounce and sell them drugs? God, it's mad, isn't it? Now, when they got the go-ahead in this park to actually put a bit of wildflower aside, put a bit of land aside to grow some wildflowers, the council put some sort of like posts in so that the people calling the mowers would know exactly where not to cut. And actually people got up in the middle of the night. And this is apparently mainly old people. I don't know how they managed, but they got up in the middle of the night and pulled out these posts. How strange do you have to be? People got really, really angry about it. And then I heard last year that they did it somewhere else. They were growing some wildflowers somewhere else. And a family complained that they could see wildflowers that were 70 yards away from their back bedroom window. They complained that they could see them and they didn't like them. And they actually complained to the local Liberal councillor who acted on their behalf. And apart from a late intervention, they were actually going to cut down the wildflower meadow because one family complained that they could see wildflowers 70 yards away. But you know what they complained about this time, which is quite interesting, because 5 years ago they complained about drugs dealers, and this time they complained that they were worried that there might be terrorists hiding amongst the flowers. Seriously, why would terrorists hide amongst the wildflowers in a park in Newcastle to blow up some fucking daisies? Oh, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. No, let's not focus on the cities. Let's blow up some flowers in Newcastle. That will teach the infidels.
The Frog Bit Blog.
And talking of bees, we were always going on about, in our house, we want to attract loads of bees. We want bees in the garden. We love bees. We want loads of bees. And this really weird thing happened a couple of years ago. And I'm sure it was like, the quantum field giving you what you wanted, because we did say we want loads of bees. Well, this time 2 years ago, I was in the house and I heard this really loud buzzing sound. And I looked out the window and the sky was more or less black and there was thousands of bees. And that's pretty. I'll be phone out and started filming it. And the next minute they come into the chimney and they came down the chimney and started filling the house up. Thousands and thousands of bees started filling the house up, and I didn't quite know what to do. It was like a horror film. Not that bees are scary, but thousands of them suddenly appearing in your house is quite scary, because we're having renovations done, and they came down the chimney, and the chimney was meant to be blocked off, but there's bits where we've been taking off the cladding and stuff, and these holes, and they were coming out all these holes, and I'm desperately trying to tape them up, and bees are sticking to the tape, and it was just all horrible. It was like some attack of the killer bees, and I had to run out the house with the dogs and wait in the allotment and think, shit, what do I do here? So calm down, went back in and opened all the doors, and they were flooding out. And we asked people and we got in touch with beekeepers, and basically it sounds like what was happening is that apparently it's like as rare a chance of it happening as winning the lottery. Next time, can we win the lottery? But apparently, probably the Queen was flying towards the woods because, we've got all the woods and they've gone in there. But they saw a chimney and thought, oh, that looks a really nice chimney. I'll go in there. And she must have given off all these pheromones and all these bees came in. And there was nothing we could do about them. Apparently, they would die. And how long would it take them to die? Over the next couple of weeks. We couldn't do anything. So we had 2 weeks of literally a house full of dying bees that were dying all around us. And it was quite horrific. What do you do? We couldn't save them, but if we let them out, they would just try and get back in. And it was just this awful, vicious cycle. And someone asked me, did I get stung? And I went, yeah, they charged me 200 quid to plaster over the chimney breast. Actually, no, I did actually get stung once by accident when I came down. I was putting a shoe on and I stood on one and got stung. But apart from that, thousands of bees in your house for 2 weeks and I got stung once. And golfers are complaining that if they ever go in the rough, they might get stung all the time. They're a bit soft, aren't they?
From Big Blog.
So, musical elements. I've done it again. Musical elephants. Why do I want to talk about elephants? A couple of things, actually. I ended up watching a Music for Elements I've done it again. Music for Elephants documentary. And watch it on YouTube. It's about 40 minutes long. It just cuts off before the end, which is quite annoying. I don't want to know what happens in the end. But it's about a concert pianist from Yorkshire called Paul Barton. And it looks like he lives in Thailand now. And he takes his piano into a sanctuary, an elephant sanctuary. And he plays for the elephants and they sing along and they dance and they do weird things with their trunks. And sometimes they bang the trunks on their keyboard. It wasn't a great sound, but still better than anything that Harry Styles has done recently. You can watch it on YouTube, but also and it was great because they weren't, he was really lovely, and the people involved with the elephants really lovely because they used to be have to work in Thailand, and they used to work clearing the forests, and apparently they get blinded a lot by all the sticks and the branches and stuff like that. So there was a lot of blind elephants in there, and he had real respect for them. He wasn't like, oh, elephants lovely and stuff. He was, he was like, yeah, appreciate they're a wild animal, but they like music, and he was playing for these blind elephants, and I got it right then, and it was absolutely lovely. And it also went on to talk about this other group, and there's an elephant orchestra. There's a band called the Thai Elephant Orchestra, and they actually recorded a number of albums, a series called Water Music, and you can go and buy them on Amazon. Look, I will just play you a little bit here to have a listen. So just have a listen to this. Great, that, isn't it? Great. They can keep a perfect beat and they can paint and they do all this kind of stuff. And they're absolutely amazing, sentient beings, wonderful creatures. They have a big herd mentality, don't they? They have matriarchs and stuff like that. And sadly, I mean, one of the other things in the news this week, well, it's not sad. It's sad in one way, but another way it was quite funny. Because remember the other week I was talking about when animals stick it to the man, and I was talking about bullfighters get gored. Well, there's a story the other week from Namibia that some wild game hunters were hunting an elephant. People in this day and age still want to kill elephants. What is up with people? Anyway, mustn't laugh, but they were hunting this elephant, and before they could set up, it trampled one of them to death. Now, again, is that really bad that I am laughing at the death of someone? Maybe it is, but I just sort of think if you're going to go around killing wild animals and the wild animal gets to you first, tough, I'm going to have no sympathy. In the words of the late, great Bill Hicks, we lost the moron. It was just a shame, actually, that the elephant didn't manage to trample all of them. There should be no place in this day and age where people can go out and shoot wild animals like that. I think it's absolutely disgusting. So the animal got one up. It killed the person that was trying to kill him. Yay, we lost a moron, but it's just sad that this stuff is still allowed to go on. Do you not agree? Now, trees. Obviously, we live near a woods. It's a semi-ancient woods, and it's got a lot of oak in there. And this time of year, when the sun's a bit lower and it shines through, it looks absolutely amazing. And it's not really till I've moved out to the countryside that I really appreciate light. Light in the countryside is different. When light's reflecting off through trees and stuff, it looks so much more amazing than when you live in the city and it's reflecting off concrete. So, I've been reading books recently, and one thing led to another. Now, I was reading a book called Beyond Supernature by Lyle Watson. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. He wrote one called Supernature, I think in the 60s, and then he probably ran out of money and thought, I better write another one. And he does stuff about in there about how amazing supernature can be. And one of the paragraphs, one of the chapters was about trees. And what happened in South Africa after the death of all these wild antelopes? This this professor investigated, and he found out that even though there was plenty of leaves on the trees, these wild antelope that ate these leaves were actually starving to death. And what he found out was when they cut them open and stuff is that there was all these leaves in their stomach. There was plenty of leaves left on the tree, and they found out that the leaves had a high content of tannin in there. And what had happened is that they realized is that the trees started producing tannin when too many leaves were being eaten. So we decided to investigate this further. So we went with a load of his students back into the woods, and they measured the leaves first of all, measured what the level of tannin is, and then they started hitting the trees. They started hitting the trees with sticks and belts, okay? Just to simulate being eaten by animals. And then they took the results of the leaves after they'd been hitting them for 5 or 10 minutes, and they found out that the levels of tannin in the leaves had gone through the roof. But not only the trees that they were hitting, but other trees nearby. And the tannin goes up so they don't taste nice for animals or insects or whatever's eating them. But the interesting thing is that the trees that weren't being hit also increased their tannin level. So they realized that there must be some way of communicating. Now, I think this book was written in the 90s, and the research didn't go any further than that. Now, from that, I ended up following this link by a woman, Professor Susan Simard. There's a TED Talk on YouTube, and she's done other talks. I will put the link. She's a very interesting person. She's Canadian. You can tell Canadians, can't they? They're like Americans, but they sound nice. It's all just a bit gentler, that kind of thing. And she spent a life, I think she's from a logging family or a timber family, but she spent a life in the woods and sort of done lots of groundbreaking research on trees. And she realized over the past 25 years that all this communication, it's all down to the fungi. Yeah. The mycorrhizal mycorrhizal network of fungi, and this lives in forests. This lives just below the surface of the forest floor, and it means that trees can communicate with each other by using this network of fungi, all this long stringy fungi. When you see fungi growing in the woods, in the forest, that's just the tip of the iceberg, as it were. There's miles, apparently, in a teaspoon of this stuff called hyphae. A teaspoon contains miles and miles of this fungus, and the trees use it to pass chemicals to one another. It's actually quite incredible, and that's how they communicate. They can pass carbon, nitrogen, water can be shared amongst them. And what it means is that if a tree's ill, the other trees will actually send it chemicals. And also mother trees or parent trees actually send more to their saplings. They actually know which ones are their saplings and they send them more. Now, why did they do this? Why would trees help each other? Well, it's like everything. It's a society. And, the forests create sort of their own climate, and they realize by helping all the trees and having lots of trees in there, it produces a better microclimate. If these gaps start appearing, then the heat can get in, they can dry out. So they actually work as a society, and they have a symbiotic relationship with this fungi to make it all work. Isn't that absolutely amazing? Anyway, this led me on to further research. So last week I bought a book called The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wohlleben or something. I fully recommend it. I'll put the link in the notes section and on the frogbitblog website. He's German, so I've probably not pronounced that correctly. And he uses some of the research that Susan has done. And he also mentions, he makes it clear that trees live in much longer than us. If they're allowed to, trees will live for thousands of years. So they operate a lot slower in a thing called tree time, which reminds me of that Fugees song, Killing Me Softly. You know, it's a really good song. And then halfway through, they've got that do time, do time, do time. That's all that guy does in that song. And what I reckon, every time I hear it, I cringe. I think they must have written this song and thought, brilliant song, but we've not got a part for him. What should we do? Oh, tell you what, mate, halfway through, you just go two time, every so often. And then they probably thought, oh, we'll edit that out after. And then, they forgot to edit it out because I can't think of any other reason why they'd have two time in that song. Anyway, back, tree time. Yep. The bloke quotes some of the work from Susan Simard. Now, he is a German and he used to work for a logging company in the big forests in Germany. And he'd pick the trees to be cut down and stuff like that. So he started off as a logger, but the longer he did the job, he started to learn more and more about trees. And you can see, and he describes how his attitude changed towards them in the book. Now, he's realised that not only do they communicate by the fungi, as Susan says, but they can also send electrical impulses through their roots. So chemically and electrically, they can communicate in this big network called the forest. That's what a forest is. It's a network of trees. Now, not only can they communicate like that, but they can send chemicals in the wind. Because trees send the chemicals like by roots and all that stuff a bit slower. But if they need to send them in a rush, they can send them by the wind. Ethylene is one such chemical that they can release to warn other trees. And this is what they do. They do it in Africa, savanna and stuff like this. And giraffes get to know this. And giraffes have to, if they eat a load of leaves and then they start tasting a bit weird, they have to go upwind so that the trees don't know they're coming. It's really a game of cat and mouse, except it's probably a game of tree and giraffe, really. And the interesting thing about these trees is that they can actually identify which insect or whatever is attacking them, and they can adjust the chemicals in them to fight the attackers. They can actually change the chemicals. They release pheromones. They can also release pheromones to attract certain predators to the insect that are attacking the tree. So if they're being attacked by caterpillars, they can give off these pheromones that attract tree wasps, and the wasps come and attack the caterpillars. And it's pretty gruesome, actually. They attack the caterpillars by stinging them. Well, not stinging them. They actually lay eggs inside the caterpillar, and the baby wasps, I'm sure there's a technical term for that, the baby wasps eat the caterpillar from the inside out. I mean, it sounds really painful, but fascinating, the level of complexity with these trees. And this guy, Peter Wohlleben, also believes that shrubs and grasses and possibly all plants communicate in the same way. Now, I've said this about animals, but trees, isn't that brilliant? And, we think as humans that we're special in some ways, but when you start looking at the whole of the world and probably the whole of the universe, there's some weird shit going on, isn't there? There's something about consciousness and about the way that it all operates that seems to operate through everything. And I will talk about that more in another podcast.
From Big Blog.
Yeah, so many countries are ahead of us. We look at Japan. If you go on Vimeo, I'm going to put a link in one of my blogs to this, but if you can't be asked waiting or reading, if you go on Vimeo and put in the search bar how to use EcoCycle, and you get to see these futuristic bike parks, and there's 50 of them in Japan. And what it is, you can imagine, they're underground, to save space, and they dig this big hole, probably about 30 meters by 30 meters, something like that. These big things, and they drop this big contraption in. It's sort of plasticky metal things. And what happens is you're overground, and you turn up, and you put your front wheel into this contraption, and then you step off the thing, and it takes your bike inside this big mechanism that goes underground. Obviously, in Britain, kids would spend all their time actually trying to keep on it and get taken in to the machine and probably get crushed to death and then complain. But anyway, in Japan, they're a bit more sensible. You put your bike front wheel in, it registers who the owner is. You obviously have some sort of tag on there. You step off, and then your bike gets sort of zoomed into this futuristic machine, and it goes inside this big cavernous thing where your bike gets parked. And it looks, to imagine it looks like the scene of the inside of the Matrix, the scene where all the humans are all the little pods. Well, it's like that. In fact, it's exactly like the Matrix, other than without the shit acting by Keanu Reeves. Who calls their kids Keanu? Really? Keanu. I always think if you're going to have a kid, you've got to do the back alley test. No, that sounds awful. Yeah, you've got to do the back alley test. And what you've got to do before you think of a name for your kid is imagine shouting down the lane. Say you'd call your son Jim. Jim, your tea's ready. All right. And if you do that, and if the name sounds okay, then you're all right. But Keanu, your tea's ready, Keanu. Doesn't do it for me. Tiffany, Chantel, your tea's ready. Okay, so if you're going to have a kid, always do the back lane test. Now, I think some of these people that come up with these names probably don't have back lanes. They're probably all rich and posh. And you look like people like Frank Zappa, the old famous musician. He had a daughter, and he called his daughter Moon Unit. Seriously, Moon Unit. Moon Unit, your tea's ready. Doesn't work, does it? He also called his other one Dweevil or something. Now, I was just looking at this because I couldn't remember exactly. I thought it was Moonbeam, but I looked on the internet. It's Moon Unit. Strange name. And it also said other strange name, Chris Martin from Coldplay and Gwyneth Paltrow. They had a child, a girl, and they've called it Apple. Apple. Really, seriously, Apple. They may as well have called it friggin' iPhone and be done with it. Apple, iPhone. Apparently, they're going to call their next one Microsoft Windows. Now, it was a lovely weekend last weekend, and as you probably know by now, I have a lovely cycle to work through woodlands, past a lake, alongside a river. But there's one thing you can guarantee when it's been nice is by every bench there's going to be a pile of litter. People must think, let's go to that lovely beauty spot, eat some food and leave all the packaging there. Why? Why do they do that? Sometimes it's beer cans. I mentioned before about bottles of wine. Sometimes it's beer cans, and at least that's a bit understandable that if you get that pissed as a fart, that collecting your litter isn't always your first priority. But the rest of the time, I've noticed, 90% of the time, it's either McDonald's or KFC rubbish. Now, I've never bought one. And does it say on the side of the packaging, take this food to a beauty spot, eat it and leave it by the bench for some other fucker to clear up after you, you lazy, thoughtless bunch of shits. Is that what it says? So anyway, it was a bank holiday in England last weekend, so there was more rubbish than usual. And as I was cycling past on my beautiful journey to work, I saw an empty bit of KFC, and amongst it was a bargain bucket. Now, is there anything more potent, a symbol of our greed and gluttony, that we happily buy food from something called a bucket? We buy a bucket. Oh, can I have a bucket of dead chicken and a trough of fattening reconstituted chips and a vat of Diet Coke, please, poorly paid young worker? Then I'm going to drive to the car park in the countryside as close as I can get to a bench, waddle over to the bench, feed myself and my fat fucking family, dump my rubbish where I left it in my orgy of gluttony, grease and greed, then waddle back to the car and make it home in time for Towie, cause I aspire to be a young, obnoxious twat. Now, there's new research out in England that 6 million adults over 40 don't even walk continuously for 10 minutes a month. 10 minutes a month. People don't walk for 10 minutes a month. Isn't that ridiculous? I do have a solution. When they build new KFCs and McDonald's, we've got to insist that the shops are really, really long. So it's at least 5 minutes walk from the doorway to the counter. So there's 5 minutes walk there and 5 minutes walk back. It's the only way you're going to get the fat, lazy fuckers to walk anywhere. Look, I know it's far, far too easy to take the piss out of people like this, but I'm going to do it anyway because it's good fun. Do some exercise, you lazy bastards, and stop eating shit food from these multinational arseholes like KFC and Mackie D and Nando's. I know it's far too easy these days, and it's a cultural thing, isn't it? Takeouts and home delivery and all that sort of stuff, but we do have responsibility for our own lives. And as we discussed last week when we were talking about Holland and cycling, if government get involved, they can make it easier for people to stay healthy. Now, people go, oh no, we can't have the nanny state interfering, as if it's some kind of slur. Well, you know, in Holland, the nanny state actually stopped children getting killed by cars. Oh, the nanny state interfering in our ability to run over our children. Yeah, oh, nanny state, we want to kill our kids, It's ridiculous, isn't it? Ooh, nanny state. Well, isn't it funny? When you get, nanny state isn't so bad when you get rushed to hospital with a heart attack for eating all that greasy food. You expect the nanny state to help you out. And I don't go into the emergency department very often, but when you're in there and it's full of people, it's funny, you don't hear them going, ooh, nanny state. Ooh, it's terrible, isn't it? The nanny state as they're being helped. And it costs us money for people to be unfit. It costs us money for the NHS. It costs us money for absences from work. And if governments invest in getting people fit and healthy, then it could save us billions in the long term. And I suppose one of the things is stopping making driving so easy. Then people have to at least cycle or walk, or at least walk to the bloody bus stop. Anyway, rant over. I feel better now.
From Big Blog.
In the UK, the only union that the government listens to and likes is the National Farmers Union. Have you noticed that? They hate unions, but they actually really like the National Farmers Union because it's controlled by huge landowners that collect millions of pounds in subsidy. In fact, there was a story from George Monbiot when he went to meet the Welsh Agriculture Minister. She got out a pen to write something, and it was an NFU pen. Yep. She's a Tory minister and she's carrying around National Farmers Union's penwares and stuff. They go hand in hand, the Tories and the NFU. They love that union. They don't like any other union. Have you ever heard a Conservative government say anything good or listen to another union other than the Farmers Union? Yeah, really. I mean, most small farmers, it's anecdotal, but what I've heard is most small farmers join because they get good deals on insurance, but they're not listened to. Yeah, they feel the same about this. The ones that shape policy are the rich farmers, and they receive huge subsidies. And you know who gets the most? James fucking Dyson. James Dyson, you know that vacuum Brexit voting prick? The one who's so patriotic about Britain that he gets all these Dysons built abroad by cheap labour. Yeah, he's a millionaire, but he could actually get them made, billionaire, he could get them made in this country, but that would involve paying his workers a decent wage, wouldn't it? So he builds them abroad, gets cheap labour so he can make more money. Well, he gets £1.6 million a year. Yeah, £1.6 million a year. And this is what it says. The government data revealed billionaires and aristocrats are among the biggest recipients of the subsidies that are mostly paid for the amount of land they own. So other than James fucking Dyson, they include the Duke of Northumberland, the Duke of Westminster, the Earl of I don't know that word, and the Guinness family and the Queen Earl of Rosebery, the Queen, and the Queen, comma, Earl of Rosebery, the Duke of Buccleuch, and Earl Bathurst. Greenpeace's UK Policy Director Dr. Parr said. And then he went on to say, it's simply indefensible that taxpayers' money is being used to bankroll huge subsidies going to billionaires on how much land they own. So dukes, in that list, there's 3 dukes, there's a queen and there's 2 earls. Yep, they get all the money for just owning land. Yep. He says public money, Greenpeace guy goes on to say public money should reward farmers for contributing to the public good, whether it's by producing sustainable food, building thriving rural economies, reducing flood risk, or protecting our wildlife. Here fucking here. Too right.
From Big Blog.
So anyway, I was at my mum's and she decided to cook us tea and we were talking about what we're going to have and she said, I'll do these potatoes, I'll parboil them. And I thought, what a strange expression, isn't it? Parboiled. Why did, when they were thinking, because it obviously means part boiled, yeah, part boiled. Why did someone go, I know, we'll save ourselves loads of time by missing off the T of part boiled to call them parboiled, yeah? How much time have you saved in your life? If you ever say parboiled, how much time do you think you've saved by saying parboiled instead of part boiled? You see, I've probably been saying it for all that time, but I've actually wasted all that time that I'd saved by actually talking about it now in this podcast. And we did actually, a couple of years ago, we did go on holiday and met a couple that had an extra 2 weeks holiday. They said they've saved up 2 weeks of their life because they've been saying parboiled instead of part boiled. Admittedly, they're about 80, but they'd saved up all that time, all them extra seconds from saying parboiled instead of part boiled, so they could have a holiday in their 80s. And I think that's really nice. So if you're going to say parboiled, think about what you're going to do with your extra time. Save it up for a rainy day. Do something useful. Don't waste it like I have on a podcast. Save it up. Go on holiday with it or something like that. Yeah? What do you think? And talking of swimming, I was in the bathroom with my dad's and this certificate on the wall. Certificate from 1953. My mum used to be a really good swimmer. And there's a certificate on the frame. And it says from 1953, and it was an intermediate certificate. And it was for releasing oneself from the clutches of the drowning. Releasing oneself from the clutches of the drowning. Seriously, only in Warrington could you get an award and a certificate for punching a drowning child in the face. Mad. Well, that was absolutely hilarious, wasn't it? Oh, such good memories of way back, months ago. So that's the high. I'm not going to say the best of, because they weren't that good, really. I was just getting going. Anyway, that's the least bad of 1 to 10. And when I get to 20, which is quite soon, I'm going to do the least bad of 10 to 20. It saves you listening through all the crap. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed it, and that's all I'm going to say. Bye.
From Big Blog. From Big Blog. From Big Blog.